Hello, my name is Rachel Shapiro, and today I want to explore with you the intersections of public writing, Twitter, and the Iranian election protests that have occurred over the last year, hopefully towards some pedagogical implications for researchers and teachers of computers and writing. The term publics can be understood as groups of people who work together to co-construct a space for developing values, organizing ideologically based missions, and working toward material goals. Writing is one of the ways in which these groups politicize their communication with the comprehensive public toward those ends. Groups such as Mothers Against Drunk Driving, door-to-door environmental advocacy activists, and consumer groups use pamphlets, websites, sidewalk chalk, and newspaper editorials to articulate their goals to administrative powers and publics beyond their own. Michael Warner, in Publics and Counterpublics, names self-organization as among the most important characteristics of publics, in that a public organizes itself independently of the state, institutions, laws, formal frameworks of citizenship, or pre-existing institutions such as the church. If it were not possible to think of the public as organized independently of the state or other frameworks, the public could not be sovereign with respect to the state. In other words, as communities organize themselves politically and without the assistance of government or other institutions, these communities can be understood to be publics. Historically, people have formed and legitimated their publics in part based on the genres through which they have communicated with these powers. These genres, soapboxing, striking, and letters to Congress, among others, were codified as respected modes of petition. However, respect was given only when individual examples of these communications proved successful and received validation among the publics themselves and later the institution. Thus, publics create access to power via the persuasive modes of public writing. Publics are organized without the state, usually for the purposes of outcry against the state, and validation occurs within and among the public itself, rather than depending on institutionalized authorities to bring credibility to the cause. In Nancy Welch's living room, she argues passionately for the place of public writing in the composition classroom. She encourages us to help students feel that they can speak out for and against social issues, despite increasing privatization of public spaces. But responding to Kathleen Blake Yancey's 2004 CEAS address, in which she advocates for increased attention to multimodality, Welch writes that we should avoid hitching our wagon to the stars of new information technologies, transforming composition into our very own credential-granting arena of expertise in multimodal rhetoric and communication. She further critiques that students who engage in public spheres, including poetry slams and blogging, still might not believe that they have a rhetorical situation, purpose, and audience that extends much further than an affinity group of at most 6 to 10 other people. Welch highlights the correlation between the mass media consolidation that's occurring in tandem with a seeming proliferation of new technology options for delivery, finally arguing that we shouldn't overstate the current potential of blogging and podcasting to extend and complicate debate. I believe that Welch is right. We need to fight for and support students who fight for our rights to organize and participate in democratic life. Welch is right, too, that when students engage in public writing, they often feel as if they are going it alone. As social media gain more and more users on a global scale, writing studies should begin to consider ways in which people fight to create digital global publics that move beyond the space of local communities to form alliances and coalitions with people who have power in other spaces. I'm wondering in what ways social media's constitution of solely user-generated content might actually open up some of those grounds that we have increasingly lost to privatization. We must resist Welch's urge to dismiss the potential of social media as spaces for public writing and engagement. We have to ask, in what ways are people using social media to differently construct realities that are being constrained by particular political situations? And we have to ask what we might lose if we discount these spaces as legitimate public spheres, as Welch suggests. With Welch's provocative claim and these questions in mind, I would like to turn to Twitter as an example of social media being used as a space for public writing. Last summer, Twitter underwent a bit of a facelift. The original Twitter homepage described the space as a service for friends, family, and coworkers to communicate and stay connected through the exchange of quick, frequent answers to one simple question: what are you doing? Perhaps many people simply didn't understand or relate to a service that seemed to encourage the broadcasting of inane and self-involved updates like, I just walked into my living room from my kitchen. Attempting to remake this site in a way that would reflect its potential, in July, Twitter underwent an interface redesign so users would instead understand the potential of the service. From a space for people to talk about what they're doing, to a space for people to share and discover what's happening right now, anywhere in the world. Twitter becomes about sharing, discovering, and the whole world. No longer individuals speaking to their already formed networks, but about exchanging what's happening with endless possibilities of global publics. Twitter becomes about participating in co-construction of the world and the web. Almost concurrently with this site's redesign, Twitter was beginning to be used as a response mechanism during and since the Iranian elections. We can look at the example of Twitter in the Iranian protests to understand how people are using the service as a platform for public writing in a particular situation of political constraint. In June of last year, the Iranian election results named Ahmadinejad the winning candidate. Widespread allegations of election fraud led Iranians to organize and take to the streets in larger numbers since they did in the 1979 revolution, to petition for democratic injustice to be rectified through vote recounts, external review, and more. Like in other recent protests, demonstrators used Twitter via mobile phones to organize physical movement through the streets of Tehran to alert each other to the presence of plainclothes police, tear gas, barricades, and rubber bullets. But what's more, Twitter has been used to engender a long-term political ideological movement, reaching to people who perhaps cannot physically be present due to distance, time, money, and ability. Using the medium of Twitter, people have most commonly used the hashtags #IranElection and Neta to organize and distribute materials related to this now nameable public. The hashtag Neta refers to the name of a bystander who was shot by a sniper in an on-the-ground protest. Her death was caught on cell phone video, uploaded to YouTube, and the link has been shared around Twitter and other social networks. People fighting for greater democracy in Iran have used Neta, whose name ironically means voice, as an icon to represent the level of tyranny, silencing, and oppression they feel. Sharing the video linked to her death makes it no longer just a news story, but something people become compelled by and implicated in. We see participation, accountability, responsibility from a wider audience than ever before. Through use of images, political slogans, and videos, people link to media on Twitter and organize with hashtags to create, build, structure, and organize a public beyond the borders of Iran.